Hello, welcome to RC Video Reviews. In this video, we're going to talk about EdgeTX and OpenTX and why it's probably time to make the switch if you haven't already. When the EdgeTX team got together and decided how they would release firmware updates, they settled on a strategy referred to as agile development. And what agile development means is that there are small incremental updates designed to ensure updates are provided on a regular schedule. Milestones are documented in the EdgeTX firmware roadmap, and that is published on the EdgeTX website. So if you're interested in the development pipeline, the only thing you have to do is visit the EdgeTX website, click on developer info, and you can see the roadmap published by the team. It's important to note that those milestones can change depending on the amount of effort going into a particular release. So it's a guide. It's not necessarily written in stone, and sometimes the dates slip. That's just the nature of dealing with software programming. The first release of Edge, version 2.4.0, dropped on July 20 of 2021. Since then, the Edge team has delivered 3 releases, 2.5, 2.6, 7, and 2.7 also saw a maintenance release of 2.7.1. I've been using that maintenance release, 2.7.1, on my production radio, flying all summer long, and I haven't had a single issue with regard to radio operations. So I definitely give 2.7.1 a vote of confidence. I've been using it without issue. The upcoming 2.8 release includes a major overhaul of the graphics subsystem. Release candidate 4 is out right now, and the final version is likely to show up any day. OpenTX works on a more traditional development model, accruing updates and providing far fewer and arguably even more incremental updates than EdgeTX. When the first release of EdgeTX 2.4 dropped on July 22, 2021, OpenTX released 2.3.14 a day later. Since then, there's only been one more release from OpenTX, and that's 2.3.15, and that happened on April 22nd, 2022. I've been unable to locate any sort of published milestone guide for upcoming releases of OpenTX. The bottom line is the EdgeTX team has a well thought out release strategy. Their milestones and targets are published for everybody to see, and their track record speaks for itself, having delivered nearly 5 releases with meaningful updates compared to 2 for OpenTX over the same period. Even though the release schedule might be enough justification for you to make the switch, that's not the reason in this video. Next up, we're going to talk about development activity. I need to stress something here. The list I'm about to show you is a severely distilled list of what I consider to be the major new features of EdgeTX that are the most broadly applicable for most users. The full list of updates is substantial. Some of the updates will be obvious to you, some won't. The EdgeTX team has invested heavily in code-based cleanup, updating libraries, and generally preparing EdgeTX for future updates. These changes are not necessarily visible to the end user, but they are essential in preparing EdgeTX for upcoming features. Between 2.4 and 2.7.1, EdgeTX has introduced the following major new features. They gave us the touchscreen. They implemented 2 new major systems in the firmware called LVGL and Free Real-Time Operating System. Those are 2 subsystems that deliver graphics and real-time operating system clocking for functions in the radio. Very important for the operation of the radio, and they've both been modernized on EdgeTX. Touch capability for Lua scripts now exists. We've got human-readable configuration files. We affectionately refer to those as YAML. We also have model labels, which is a really nice way to handle management and storage of models on your radio. We've got an onboard theme editor, model templates, and many more widget layouts than OpenTX provides. These are what I consider to be the major updates. I'll share a comprehensive changelog of EdgeTX and OpenTX side by side in just a moment to show you just how much work, how many improvements have been made since EdgeTX 2.4 just over a year ago. I reviewed the OpenTX changelog over the same period, and while work has definitely been accomplished, none of the modifications I saw rise to the level or standard of major new features I applied to the EdgeTX changelog. By comparison, OpenTX simply did not evolve nearly as much as EdgeTX over the same period. I've consolidated the changes in EdgeTX and OpenTX into 2 lists. They're about to scroll by, and they'll scroll by at the same speed. The idea here is to give you a visual indication of the volume of updates in EdgeTX versus OpenTX since EdgeTX 2.4. While the development activity in EdgeTX might be enough of a difference to justify a switch for you, that's still not why we're here. Next up, we're going to talk about manufacturer adoption. Manufacturer adoption is a significant directional indicator because they're placing bets on the software that will best enable their product roadmap. Several new radios have been released or announced with EdgeTX as the firmware of choice. The Radiomaster TX16S Mark II, that is the flagship radio of the Radiomaster lineup, and it shipped with EdgeTX. The Radiomaster Zorro is Radiomaster's primary entrant in the gamepad style radio market. It also shipped with EdgeTX. The Jumper T-Lite V2 is a recent gamepad style radio released by Jumper. It shipped with EdgeTX. The FlySky EL18 was announced over the summer of 2022, and it will be shipping with EdgeTX as well. Radio manufacturers are jumping on board with EdgeTX, and I view their adoption as a leading indicator of where things are headed in the open source radio firmware space. If the manufacturers are shipping new products with EdgeTX, it's pretty safe to assume there's an economic reason behind it, which will likely have something to do with new features and capabilities enabling these hardware producers to maximize adoption of their products. You might consider manufacturer adoption to be enough justification to make the switch, but stick with me, that's still not the reason. We're going to get to it soon, but next up we're going to talk about community engagement. The EdgeTX team has done a spectacular job creating a multi-channel communications network allowing users of EdgeTX to engage directly with developers, testers, and others knowledgeable enough to take advantage of these tools. Discord, for example, is a multimedia collaboration platform which is free to use. EdgeTX is supported by a robust Discord community, and it's regularly frequented by developers, software testers, hardware manufacturers, YouTubers, including yours truly, and other fans of the firmware. If you have a question about operating your EdgeTX equipped hardware, the EdgeTX Discord is beyond a question of a doubt one of the best places on the internet to get help, and it's free. In addition to Discord, EdgeTX utilizes GitHub to store source code as well as firmware binaries, EdgeTX Companion, and supporting software files such as sound, themes, and Lua scripts. The EdgeTX GitHub also allows users to track open issues, report bugs, and make feature requests. OpenTX also keeps source code on GitHub, which means it shares some of the capabilities of EdgeTX. However, the OpenTX GitHub simply isn't as inviting. It seems more focused on the developers. You can download the source code, but the binaries and supporting software are not available, or at least I couldn't find them. One example of how the EdgeTX GitHub is more inviting for users, on the EdgeTX GitHub, the EdgeTX team provides directions for 3 different methods of compiling EdgeTX on your own. No such example exists on the OpenTX GitHub. The EdgeTX community is a pretty darn good reason to switch, but that's still not the answer. The real reason you want to make the change to EdgeTX now is because the gap is opening and it's not going to close back up again. Let me explain what I mean. With the new graphics library, they're really focusing on touch, and as such, they're rearranging all of the screens in such a way that enable touch to be a much more user-friendly method for configuring the radio. When you compare the touch configuration on EdgeTX 2.8 with the non-touch configuration on OpenTX, you can really start to see how the configuration elements now live in different places altogether. So if you're used to operating OpenTX and you want to make the jump to EdgeTX, it might almost feel like learning a new radio system. Now that said, there are certain core functionalities that I think will transition from OpenTX to EdgeTX quite well, namely the concepts of the input, mixer, and outputs, and of course the logical switches and the special functions and global functions. I think all of that kind of carries over, and that's sort of the heart of the system. So while I see some commonality going forward on that front, what's really going to change is the way the radio looks and how it feels when you're going through configurations. We already have a fairly substantial change in how we manage our models. In the new EdgeTX 2.8, we're going to be managing models based on a labeling system. That's quite a bit different than the category system in that with labels, you can apply more than one label to one aircraft. So you might have an aircraft that's considered an airplane and a favorite, and you might have another aircraft that's considered a helicopter and a favorite. When you click on the favorites label, you'll see both the airplane and the helicopter. You simply can't do that with the older styles of category management on OpenTX style radios or EdgeTX radios prior to 2.8. So these are substantial changes in the way we configure and utilize the radio, and that's why I think it's time to make the change. EdgeTX has proven to be highly reliable. Over this past summer, I flew EdgeTX 2.7.1 with everything I own, including my most expensive planes and helicopters, and I never had an issue that I would attribute to the radio. With EdgeTX 2.8 and the brand new graphics subsystem they've implemented, this will open the door for the developers to really rethink their strategy and how we interact with our radios. They really have the ability to change the look and feel. And if you're stuck with OpenTX and you decide to make the switch over to EdgeTX sometime down the road, it may be a little bit of a shock for you. You may feel like it's learning an entirely different radio. So that's why I think now is the time to make the change, because we're starting to see some real separation in the look and feel for regular operations of the radio. Now, with all that said, if you like OpenTX and you have no desire to make the change, that's fine. I can't find any indication on the web that OpenTX is going to go away anytime soon. I'm simply suggesting that EdgeTX development has outpaced OpenTX at this point. The new graphics subsystem and free real-time operating system are going to allow the developers to really kind of reimagine the way we work with our radios, and the gap is wide now, and it's going to get wider. I hope this video helps you see the difference in EdgeTX and OpenTX beyond the touchscreen, and hopefully it'll help you make a decision on what's right for you. If you like this kind of material, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell so you know new videos hit the channel. That's all I've got for today. Take it easy. And go fly something. Hey, if you like the work I do here on RC Video Reviews, please consider joining me on Patreon. For about the price of a cup of coffee, you can help me keep making videos just like this one. If you'd like to help out, there's a link in the description and on your screen.